Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. We are very excited to host Ann Koffsky, who is an author and illustrator of children's books on the making of a children's book. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, of course, we are all thinking about the situation in Israel of our brothers and sisters there at this time, and also being concerned with our own safety and the Jewish people in the world around us. I know a lot of us have been having a difficult time focusing and paying attention to anything else these days. But I just want to acknowledge that we're very fortunate to be part of Yeshiva University, and YU has gone to great lengths now and always to create a supportive and safe environment for Jewish people to learn and to thrive. And in the current situation, the philosophy of the university is to strike a balance, or try to strike a balance between trying to do some everyday, routine things and nice events like the one we have scheduled for tonight, but also to be very sensitive about the situation that's ongoing. We are very lucky to have the opportunities that we do being part of YU, especially now, to appreciate them and take part in them as we're all doing tonight, even if we do so with very heavy hearts. I'm honored to really be the one to welcome you to this event, Behind the Scenes with Ann Koffsky, the making of a children's book. Before I begin, I just want to thank the sponsors of this event, Yeshiva University Libraries, the Stern College Education Department, the Stern College Art Department, and the Stern College Speech Pathology and Audiology Department. And with a special thanks to Shalamis Hess, the East Resources Manager and Public Services Librarian, Tina Weiss, who works with Shalamis as a head librarian, Dr. Meredith Resnick, who is the Clinical Assistant Professor of Education at Stern College, and the IT department. It could not have happened without all of your help. And now I would like to introduce Ann herself. Ann is a very good friend of mine. She is the author of an illustrator of over 40 children's books. Many of them have Jewish themes and characters. Ann is a Stern College alumnus, and she has also taught at Stern as an adjunct professor in the art department. Ann is very passionate, caring, and knowledgeable about her craft, and she is generously giving us her time and expertise tonight. Just this morning, she also gave of her time and expertise to speak with children in Israel to help them go through this difficult time. As a speech language pathologist myself, I have used Ann's books in my clinical work, and they are very enriching and loved by all the children who have encountered them. I have also spent a lot of time talking with Ann personally about her work. I find it absolutely fascinating, and I think it's very relevant to all the sponsoring academic departments. It touches on art, child development, and language, just to name a few. And without further ado, I would like to turn the mic over to Ann to share her wisdom and experience.
Thank you.
Before you start, I just want to tell everybody that you will have time for questions that you can ask, but also please put them in the chat and we will address them at the end. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Ann.
All right, that's fine. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. I think I said to you on WhatsApp earlier today, that's one of the best introductions people have ever said for me, so I'm very excited about it. And I'm really excited to be here. I started my day this morning at 8 a.m. My face was zoomed into Ramat Beit Shemesh, and I met with a bunch of fourth graders, giving them a similar but fourth grade level version of this. So it's a really nice way to frame my day, starting in Israel and ending at my alma mater that I really actually loved going to so much. So this is very meaningful way to frame my day. So hi, it's great to see everybody here. It's great to see so much interest, and I'm excited to start. As Elise just said, this is a talk about behind the scenes, very dramatic, behind the scenes of making a picture book for children, or books for children in general. So just starting with that, the first thing that it's obvious, and you guys probably know this, but there are many, many people involved in making a children's picture book. I mean, obviously, you look at the cover and it says written and illustrated. So there's authors and illustrators. So that's an obvious one. But there's also the publisher, who's pretty much the boss. And those are the people you've heard of, like Simon and Schuster or Scholastic or Penguin. Those are publishers. And they're the people who hire everybody. But besides them, there's the designers who lay out the type. There's the copy editors who make sure that you got all your commas and capitals in all those places. There's the designer. I said that already. There's the editors that work with the authors to make their work stronger and critique it. There's art directors who do the same thing for illustrators who work with their art and critique it. So there's all these different cast of characters, just like when you put on a Broadway show, it's not just the people who are on the stage. There's all those people behind. And I'm not going to talk about any of them because I'm going to talk about myself. But I do wanted to highlight that there is a whole team that makes a picture book. And I'm going to talk about the behind the scenes of just two of those parts, which is authoring and illustrating, which is what I do. Okay. So first, what I'm going to do is talk about the writing. I'm starting with the writing because writing, most picture books start with the words. There are exceptions, but most picture books start with the words, with a manuscript and with an idea. And that idea comes from the author. And that actually, when you're a writer, is the absolute hardest part of writing a book, is coming up with that idea. Because there's a lot of books that have already been written and you have to come up with a new one. And that's really, really hard. So I just talked just a little bit about, that's one of the classic questions I always get asked. Where do you get your ideas? And the answer is a different place every single time. But if I look at all my books and the different ideas that I've had, it's usually something that I care about. And that could be from love, from anger, from really ticked off, from irritated, from adorable, just something that really impacts my emotions in some way. So I'll just hold up a couple examples to use to show you how I generated the ideas. So Sarah Builds a School is one that I wrote and didn't illustrate, which is why it's good to hold up for the writing part. And it's a story of Sarah Schnurra. And I wrote it because I got angry one day about something about how her story was being misrepresented. I think I picked up a cookbook of some kind that told Sarah Schnurra's story incredibly inaccurately because it's been mythologized seriously. And I'm like, I don't think that's what happened. And that got me very upset because they were sugarcoating it. They didn't mention that she was divorced. They didn't mention that she had no children. They were saying that she only did anything unless she had a lot of rabbinic approval, which was totally not true. She acted on her own for about 10 years before she got rabbinic approval. And I'm like, this doesn't sound right. And I worked with a historian. And I'm like, aha, I shall fix this problem that I've encountered and made me annoyed by making a children's book, because that will fix everything. But because I was passionate, I was able to tell that story and care about it. Another time I got angry and that it led to a picture book was this one called Judah Maccabee Goes to the Doctor. Forget about COVID. Pretend that didn't happen. Before COVID, there was this thing called measles. And there were a bunch of anti-vaxxers who went in my kids' school who were getting very mad at the school because it was making them vaccinate. And they went to court and it was really ugly and yay. But that made me very angry when I read the complaint, because my husband's a lawyer and he found the complaint that they were suing the school. And they were saying, it is our religious belief that we should not get vaccinated. And I said, hold up. It's one thing if you saying you can't get vaccinated. You're not allowed to say Torah is the reason. And that's what they were saying to the court. They were saying it's a religious objection. So that made me very mad. So again, I tried to solve the world's problems with the children's book and talked about a story with the kids very scared and they go to the doctor and they get a shot and then they talk about bravery and how it's a mitzvah to take care of your health. So those were, anger ones. Motivated by anger, intense emotions that I was feeling with those. But sometimes I just do things for fun. And there's the Kalon Kugel series. It's a series of 4 books now, which is kind of cool. Um, and that was inspired again because things happen in my life. I noticed that I have a lot of neighbors, and a lot of my neighbors are dogs. And a lot of the dogs were named after foods. There was Cookie, and there was Brownie, and there was Hummus, and there was uh, Pepper, a lot of foods. And I was thinking, and I just saw all these dogs around because it's what Steph said, there are a lot of dogs. And I was thinking, well, there's all these non Jewish dog books. There's Clifford, there's Spot, there's a lot of them. And there weren't really any Jewish dog books. So I said, aha, I shall make a Jewish dog book. I will name the dog after a Jewish food. And that's how Kayla and Kugel was born. So that's kind of a little bit about idea generation. Just like what is around in your life and what is sparking you in some way. Um, let's see. So I said that we do the words first, and then, okay, we have the idea. We're going to write the story about Judah Maccabee going to the doctor, except it's not really Judah Maccabee. It's a little boy who imagines himself being brave like Judah Maccabee. So in order to, writing is like such a complicated thing. It's hard to really capture all the things you have to do, right? You've all been to movies and you come out of the movie and sometimes you're like, that was great. And sometimes you say that was bad. And usually it's because of the underlying story, why you'll say one or the other and how it's told. So sometimes they're really good at building the characters and you fall in love with them and you care. So that doesn't just happen. You have to, how do you write that? And sometimes they do a great job building up an arc and then you're like left hanging and you're like, wait, it didn't end, right? You got to write so that there's a beginning, a middle, an end. There has to be an arc, a plot that goes up and down. And it's really hard to like articulate all those different things when I'm sitting here talking to you. But one of the things, so figured I'd highlight one thing. One of the things that when I'm writing a story is I always think in terms of problem and resolution. The character has got to have a problem and they've got to overcome it and resolve it. They can resolve it badly, they can resolve it well, but if you don't have a problem and a resolution, then it's going to be a story about going grocery shopping and getting everything you need, and that's going to be very boring. So I'm always looking for Judah Maccabee, what's the problem? The problem is not that I'm mad about people with vaccines. The problem in the story is that he's scared of getting a shot. That's a big problem. And then the resolution is how does he find that courage to overcome it? And the story, and this is true now, so this is a fictional book. I made this whole thing up. But that problem and resolution is true in nonfiction when I'm talking about Sarah Schneera as well. She had a problem, and the problem was girls didn't know any Torah, and she solves it by founding these schools, which was amazing. She founded thousands of them. So even when you're telling a nonfiction story, you're looking for that problem and resolution structure so that when you tell the story, it's a story and it's not just, I went and bought grapes. And then everybody's like, yeah, what's to that? I went and bought grapes. They all spilled out of the bag. And then I had to go buy more grapes. That's already more interesting. You've got a problem. You spilled the grapes. You resolved it. You bought more. Not a very good story, but at least it's a story. Okay. So that's a little bit about storytelling. Oh, but there's one other thing I wanted to highlight when you're talking about storytelling is the key to writing is thinking about who you're writing for. So a lot of time people, and I think this is a great thing to do, people journal. And when you're writing in your journal, you're writing for yourself, and that's an emotional outlet. And that's fantastic. And that's an emotional writing experience. But when you're writing a book, you're writing to be read. And if you just emotionally pour yourself onto the page and not keep your reader in mind, they're not going to like it very much because you haven't thought of them. So when you write a book, you really have to think about your audience and who they are and how it's going to strike them. And especially when you're writing a children's book, you have to think about, am I writing to 1-year-olds? Am I writing to 2-year-olds? What language are they capable of? What concepts are they up to yet? Have they learned the idea of gravity yet? Or is that shocking? Are they going to be eating this book or really reading this book, right? If they're little toddlers, they're going to chew on the corners and you can maybe say 2 or 3 words on a page. If they're older and they're second graders, an older picture book, you could say some chunky sentences. And And it's not just like more words or less words. It's what kind of words. I'll always say when I'm in my writing group and somebody says, I don't know, someone was writing a book and they used the word stockholders. And I'm like, I don't think, and they were writing for 3-year-olds. I'm like, I don't think 3-year-olds got the concept of stockholders down yet. That's a complicated idea. That's a big kid word. So you have to say, people who had money, right? You have to break it down into a simpler idea. And even things like saying cannot or can't, right? What age are kids up to contractions and using that in their everyday speech and relating to it? So, and this I think Elise is going to really kick into, like that I'm thinking about what language and what developmental stage the kids, my audience that I'm writing for, are up to. Because it's like and it's hard when you're a writer. Like when you're a stand-up comedian, you stand on the stage and you tell your jokes. There's your audience. Oh, they're laughing. Oh, they're not laughing. And you learn very directly, and then you know which jokes to tell next time and which ones not to tell. But when you write, you're sitting in your room by yourself, and there's a disconnect to your readers. So you have to really understand kids and research that in order to write for them. So you could have focus groups in your own house if you have your own kids and you see their friends and you know what they're up to. Like when I wrote the first Kayla and Kugel book, I noticed that my daughter really loved playing with her tea set and setting the table and unsetting the table and setting the table and unsetting the table. And for some reason that was very fun. So I said, okay, I'll make a book about setting the table for Shabbat. It doesn't have to be a tea set. It could be candles and challah and grape juice. But I knew that that was an age appropriate thing because I had seen her. Now my kids are big and they're taller than me. So I really enjoy going to school groups and remembering, oh yes, this age of this kid does this then. And I see them and I interact with them and I don't forget that that's what 5-year-olds are like, which is very nice. And it's also fun because they're cute. So yes, you have to keep that in mind. And I'll just give you a visual example here because that's fun. I like playing show and tell. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Somebody give me a thumbs up and say I could, yeah? Okay, great. Okay, so this is a book that I developed with a speech and language expert named Elise Granick. When we went on a couple of walks. I wanted to do a really young kids book about tzedakah, and I thought about how a cat is symbolically a curious animal, and we could have this cat interact with this box, which happens a lot on the internet. There are a lot of cats in boxes together. So I thought, so we should have a cat with a tzedakah box. And the book actually turns, so I'm sorry, you have to look at it sideways. But if you look through the book, Thule is interacting with a lot of concepts that age kid is doing. And if you look at books for this age, it doesn't happen just in this book, but in a lot of books, opposites, heavy, light, up, down, let's see, empty and full. And so you could see just in these different pages, the cat, here's the heavy. Hey, it's not heavy anymore. It is empty again. And these are all very age appropriate concepts and hopefully really cute too. Okay.
If I could just interject for a minute.
Please do.
We did collaborate a little bit. Don't give me so much credit. But it was very, very enjoyable to see your process through that. And that was kind of how the event kind of got started a little bit tonight. Mm-hmm. But some of the things that I found really interesting about working on the book a little bit with you and seeing your process were first of all, how you put a very few words on the page for that age group. It was for very young children. Mm-hmm. Also, it was kind of a universal message, right? That it was written for Jewish children, but also for other, anybody could benefit from it. And then also I appreciated that it wasn't a specific time of year, because something else about that age child, a very small child, is that they want to read the book over and over and over again. And as parents or as professionals that work with young children, we see that they will end up reading a book about a holiday or something well past the season. So it's kind of nice to have something that comes with us the entire year. And incorporating these, fundamental concepts of heavy and light, or empty and full, into, and there were just so many layers to the book that it was enjoyable as an adult to read it with young children as well. So I just wanted to add that little
Thank
bit.
you. That's exciting. If I can also hit the other audience member that's always there, which is parents, that's a nice thing too. Sesame Street was always very good at that, right? They always did multiple level jokes.
Exactly.
And I do try to hide some things in there for the parents sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't really work. I'm going to share my screen again to highlight one of the things Elise just said. Here, let's go back in. And that's how the words on the page, depending on the audience. So I made a book called Creation Colors, which retold the story of Breshit. And this was a good example of a book that started with the pictures first, because I don't know, I wanted to make pictures of creation, and I did. And then after that, I made the words to go with it. But this is how the book went. This is an illustration that appeared in Creation Colors. And you see all these words. On day two, God poured bubbling blues across the skies and into the watery oceans and seas. And that was made into a book, and that was great. Later, I was exploring with the publisher that I did this with, hey, maybe we could, it's about colors, and colors are learned at an even younger age than what this was hitting. And we said, maybe let's age it down and do a littler kid version. So even though this is not that many words, we went to even fewer words as a sample, and it became bubbling blue waters, and that was it. And what's interesting about this, and I really want to highlight here, is that it went to fewer words. But as you can see, obviously, from going from this to this, it went to simpler visuals too. Because younger children respond to simple shapes and graphic impact more than this complexity. So we switch from complicated words to simple words to go and age it down, but we switch from complicated visuals to simpler visuals. And the same thing is true here. So Thule is pretty simple in its illustrations as well. There's a lot of, there's 2 characters on this page and very few words. But when I jump up to an older age, we go to Under the Sea Seder. Let's pick something here. And this is supposed to be for older kids. I'm just going to pick something. Hold on. What will show up good on screen? Sorry, bear with me. Okay. All right. Look how many more words are on there. And even though it's still a lot of white space, there's a lot of complexity going on in that illustration. There's 3 people. There's props on the table. There's textures and facial expressions. The next spread gets even more complicated. Now we've got 5 people on a spread, even more props. And a good example of really getting complicated is this one, where there's fish, there's dolphins, there's a submarine, there's things to see inside the submarine, and lots to look at, and just a higher level kid. So keeping the kids in mind, keeping your audience in mind is a very big deal. Otherwise, your reader really won't like it that much. And what's the fun of that? Okay, so I did the creation colors. All right, now I'm going to talk. We did the writing part. We did see some art, but we were really talking about writing. Now we're segueing into illustration part. And the way illustration typically works in terms of my process, everybody does it differently, is that I like to first do something called character sketches and figure out what is my character going to look like? Because Kayla, in my Kayla in Kugel books, is completely imaginary, which means I don't know what she looks like. I don't have any photos of her, so I have to design my character. And let's see about a couple characters we could look at that you know and love. Here we go. Here's that one and that one. And okay. And now I'm going to share my screen again because show and tell is the best. Okay. So everybody knows Dora. And Dora is a really, really well-designed character because you knew right away. I did not have to tell you her name. You knew that was Dora. I'm almost 100% sure you knew that was Dora. And the way this character is recognizable is that she is not realistic. There is no human on this earth who has a head this big in relationship to their body, right? So they are deliberately exaggerating and stylizing different things about Dora to make her be Dora. So her eyes are huge, but really what's very distinctive about her is this giant, giant head. We could also look like, this is Abby Cadabby from Sesame Street. And they also, first of all, she's pink. Most people aren't pink, so that will make you recognize her. But that's also great about Abby Cadabby. She really does look like any other Muppet until you check out these huge pigtails, right? So you're designing the character to have something that like, that's Abby Cadabby. She's got those pigtails. It's instant. And another nice way to look at it is over here with Elephant and Piggy. It's not necessarily what you add, but it's sometimes what you don't do. Sometimes less is more kind of situation, because elephant and pig, most people's eyes and most elephants and pigs' eyes are way more complicated, just as an example, than these eyes and these eyes. These eyes are dots. Your eyes have lids and eyelashes and a white part, a black part, and a colored part, way more complicated. So the Mo Willems, who's an amazing illustrator, is actually using the less is more to make them more recognizable. So character design is a huge part of, just figuring it out. What should this character look like? And now I'm going to do, nobody laugh at, no, that's not what I want to do. Hold on. New this. I'm going to show you a quick sketch of Kayla. That still didn't do it. Okay. Put it in inches. 8 by 10. Getting myself a blank piece of paper. Can you guys see this? Is it too small?
We see it.
You could see it? Okay, great. So just looking at what we just looked at, I'm going to do a quick and dirty drawing of Kayla to show you how those kind of things are things that I thought about. So big giant head like Dora. Dots for eyes like Elephant and Piggy. I'm going to give her a neck too, just for fun. All right. I'm really a much better illustrator than this. I'm just doing it really fast. Then we have Abby Cadabby's cool pigtails. And now we've got Kayla. That's pretty much what she looks like in the book, except much better. Okay, and then I'll just show you. Can you still see me, by the way? Here's an illustration of Kayla that ended up in the book.
And maybe stop share for a minute so we can see the actual book better.
Okay, this is not a book. This is a piece of art.
Oh, okay. See, I couldn't even see that. Much better.
Okay, and that's much better Kayla, but pretty much that's the character design. So there Kayla showed up. Okay, I'm just looking at the time. I could show you some more characters, or I could go to the next part. I'm trying to think about. Okay. The other thing about being an illustrator is it's not just that you're illustrating what the words say. The author is the author of the words. The illustrator is the illustrator of the pictures. But it's a collaboration in terms of the content. What do I mean by that? the illustrator says certain things with the words, but when an illustrator the author says stuff with the words. But it's not just that the words say, and then the cat sat on the red box, and then the illustrator comes along and makes a picture of the cat sitting on the red box. And then they turn the page, and then that's how the story is told. The illustrator adds in their own interpretation of the story using visuals. And I'm going to try to give a dramatic example with using two of my books. I mean, maybe not that dramatic because it is just a children's book. But this, in Kayla and Kugel Sukkot, the whole book is they build the sukkah, they get ready for the sukkah, and then at the last page, everything is built, Sukkot has come, and the last page, this is what the words say. A sukkah isn't a sukkah without guests to share it in. So take a minute, think about those words. I'll say them one more time, and think about what picture you would draw for, I'm going to say it now, a sukkah isn't a sukkah without guests to share it in. Okay? And now I'm going to show you the picture in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. So this is the illustration that I made for that. Now, not in the words was a whole other family, a whole other pet, sukkah decorations that feel like Kayla may have made them because they're really childlike. Lots of stuff on the table, educating about round challahs, honey, grape juice, or wine, depending on your mood. Also, I'm showing diversity, right? They've invited a non-white Jewish family to the sukkah. So with the pictures, I have added a huge amount of content that's not in the words. Okay, we'll do that one more time because that was fun, or at least I had fun. It's hard to tell if you guys are having fun because you can't talk. Okay, so in my upcoming Sukkot, that was this year's Sukkot book. I actually have another Sukkot book coming out next year called The Three Little Sheep. And in The Three Little Sheep, the sheep, one builds a sukkah of straw, one builds a sukkah of sticks, and one builds a sukkah of, I'm going to read the words, and then you imagine in your head what the illustration will look like, and then I will do the big reveal. Right? I'm not sharing my screen right now. I haven't ruined it. Good. Okay. So these are the words. Jenny built her sukkah with bricks and all kinds of different things. She wanted to be big enough for many guests to fit inside. So what would you do for that picture? Okay. And now I'm going to share my screen and show what I did, because every artist is different, but it does show how. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Did anybody imagine construction equipment? But I did, because I really wanted to show how this sheep is going all out. Okay, she needs to have a truck, and she's not just using bricks, she's using all different kinds of things like Greek Ionic columns. So she's really going all the way. And she's got a little construction hat, and her little flowers in her hair are sticking out of it if you can look really closely. And here's our wolf character looking on. I wonder what he'll be doing on the next page. So the words didn't even introduce the wolf, but I know he's coming. And I want the kids to say, oh, look at that. I can see the wolf, even though sheep can't see the wolf. I wonder what will happen next. And you know that movies do that a lot, right? There's visual images of, okay, this is violent, but like I just came to my mind, Psycho with the knife. There's no words that say, and a woman holds a knife. Nobody says, I am now holding a knife. You just see it and you're terrified because it's Psycho. I'm not doing that because I'm in a kid's book and we're not going to scare the children. But we can do a little bit of foreshadowing. There's this other character that's going to be a big part of the story to come. Okay, let's see. Now, because I said that this was behind the scenes, I'm going to do a little behind the scenesy thing. We're going to close over those. Okay, so I showed you the very poor character sketch, but I refine that. I send that to the art director and the editor, who are my bosses, who work for the publisher, who's the person who pays me. And then they say, make it stronger. We go back and forth. They say, why'd you make her nose look like that? Could you make her nose look differently? That goes back and forth a bunch of times. Characters are approved. Okay, I can now do interior sketches. And I'm going to share my screen and show you the interior sketches for Kayla and Kugel Hanukkah. And here we are. This is Kayla and Kugel's Happy Hanukkah. And this page does not have a sketch because it's the title page, and I haven't made that yet. But it's been sent to the designer, and the designer has laid in all this type. And it's been sent to my editor and art director, whose name is Dina. And Dina is going to do these little dingbats, bubbles, all over the place, making comments to me of ways that I can make my drawings stronger, that she sees and is advising me. So she's being very nice on this first page. She's saying, nice, I like the pose, the off-balance pose here, since she's carrying a heavy box. Great, Dina likes it, yay. Next page. Kayla looks great here. She looks exasperated, but the rest of the scene is looking a little bare. It's hard to tell if it's an attic. I think we need more stuff, more boxes and things and beams and all sorts of stuff she's advising. That was a very good suggestion. So when I went and well, let's do one more. Lots of suggestions here. Kugel is getting lost. We can't really see him. She doesn't like how I drew the paws. She really likes the menorah, but can she see more stuff in the box? It keeps going. Lots and lots of yellow bubbles. This is round 1. There's about 4 rounds of this. Okay, I fix the sketches, goes back, more yellow dingbats. I fix it, comes back. Finally, she says, sketches look great. We can make the final illustrations. Now we have something on the title page. Look what happened there. And there's a dedication to my parents because I'm a nice person. And here's that first page, which looks awfully similar to that first sketch I made because remember, she liked it. But remember how she said the second page, add more stuff. Look at that, I added a lot more stuff. Also in the process, Kugel has changed pose significantly. Before he was being with the Purim box like this, which is adorable, but in the process, we moved him to the next page, right? So the storytelling we figured would make more sense if he's starting to do the Purim box over here, and then by the next page, now he's already in the costume. So we've shown, oh, look, he found the Purim box. Now he got into the Purim box. Also, none of that's in the words. It just said he found a Purim box. It did not say, I'm going to wear a tutu, a crown, and a mask. But that's funny, at least to a 3-year-old. And we're coming up on 8:40. So, yeah, I think that's kind of behind the scenes. And I think I can show you some more stuff, examples of each thing, but I think I kind of covered my stuff. So I think we can open it to questions unless, yeah, if we open it to questions, then I'll try to show more things with show and tell as I answer them. But thank you for listening to me talk about my books. It's always fun.
So I'm going to ask, thank you so very much, Anne. And I'm just going to ask if people could put their questions into the chat. Oh, we have one from Reza. She was wondering, do you do all your illustrations digitally?
So that has been an evolution. Let me get this. So this was the way I used to do it. This was book 1 for Kayla and Kugel, which I did about 10 years ago. And if you see, it's on paper and paint and pencil and all manner of stuff. And now it's all on my iPad. And I don't think a screen is going to look very good on a screen, but trust me when I tell you, I use Procreate I used only Procreate to create the latest Kayla and Kugel Sukkot book, which just came out this year. And now I've switched to complete digital.
Oh.
Yeah. So the answer was, I used to do it one way, now I do it the other way.
Okay.
Are authors allowed to do their own illustrations? Authors are allowed to do their own illustrations if they're an illustrator. And if the illustration style that they do is appropriate for the story they've written. Meaning, I have a tendency to draw animals with googly eyes and very, very cute, appropriate for ages 2, 3, 4. That's my style. I'm cute. I've got black outlines. I like drawing the dog in a tutu with a crown on its head. Okay, that's my thing. But I just wrote a story that's coming out in 2025. Oh my God, I can't believe I have to wait that long. But it's about Harry Truman and how he recognized Israel. It is not appropriate for me to draw Harry Truman. He's going to look way too cute if I do it. So they're getting a different illustrator. So it really depends if what you write is appropriate for what you draw. And sometimes I match, and sometimes I'm a whole different person and they need to find a different artist.
Okay. So one person also asked, can you tell us how you got started with your first book?
Yes. So once upon a time, I thought I was an artist and I didn't know that I was a writer. And I went to trade shows. Those used to exist before COVID at Javits Center. And there was the gift and stationery show. And I went walking the aisles trying to find illustration clients for my work. And I met and got a new client called Schulsinger Judaica, which is a part of, if you guys have heard of Right Light Judaica. And they decided, so they looked at my work and they said, oh, that's nice. We'll call you when we have something. And I'm like, they're not going to call me. I better propose something to them. So I'll say, and they had mentioned in the conversation that they were thinking about doing little books as gift items because they were not a publisher, but they did many gift items. They made wrapping paper, they made toys, they made puzzles, they made dreidels that light up. They do all this stuff. And they were thinking about adding little kid books to their products, not thinking about it as a book, thinking about it as a toy. So I said, I got an idea for a book. And I wrote the manuscript and I did a sketch for one picture and they said, go for it. And that was my first book. And it was sold in Pathmarks next to the gefilte fish because they weren't booksellers, they were stuff sellers. So that was who they sold their stuff to. And I have a coupon somewhere. I have a coupon that says like 30 cents off gefilte fish and 20 cents off my book from like ShopRite, I was like, oh, I've made it. I'm in the circular. So that was kind of fun. And it grew from there. And then I realized, oh, look at that. I wrote. I guess I'm a writer now. And I've really, really enjoyed my writing. And sometimes I love not illustrating and I just like doing the writing and it goes back and forth.
So looking over some of the other questions and some of them are really like publishing type questions. So
go for it.
I might combine a few, I think Miriam's and Adam's. One question was, do you self-publish or you generally go with a publisher? You said you had a publicist, and you can also, if you want, you can tell us, when you were
business
initially
stuff.
starting out? Yeah, well, when you were initially starting out, did you just send manuscripts they wanted, out to everybody? Did you try to find niche, either Jewish or non-Jewish publishers in addition?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a whole spiel and we'll see if I cover them. Okay. Me telling you about my life 20 years ago when I started is completely irrelevant to how it works today. So I'm not even going to try because they used to do things like let you bring a portfolio to their office, drop it off. They would look at it and write a letter giving you comments. Nobody does this anymore. So me explaining, saying that that's what was done is lovely history, but it doesn't matter. The way the industry works now, let's say you're a writer and you want to get published. Forget the illustration part because that's a whole other thing. We'll start with the writing part. I'm going to assume everybody wants to be one thing and not two things. If you're a writer and you've written a manuscript and you have gotten, now I'm going to emphasize this part, your manuscript is amazing. It is not like, I think this might be something, or I read it to my grandchildren and they loved it. Your grandchildren will always love it because you read it to them and you're their grandparent. So that's not a good test. I mean, you've brought it to other people who will tell you you look ugly in this dress. Those people, not your mother. People who will critique you and who you value their opinion, and they're educators or they're also writers or whatever, and you've pounded on this thing and it is the best thing ever. Okay, so you have your manuscript and you've made it the best thing ever, and now you're ready to get it published. You have a couple different routes. One is, yes, you can self-publish it on Amazon, create a space, you upload it, and you hire your own illustrator and you pay for them to do it. And you get paid for a designer and you've made a lot of investment to do all those things. And then you upload it onto Amazon Create a Space. And then you sell 25 copies to your mother, grandmother, cousin, and uncle who lives in Canada. And now you're done. Unless you have decided to become a marketing genius and are going to hand sell that darn thing in a truck and go from school to school to school and read in communities and really do a huge sell, because it's really hard to get things out there. And you could do that, but you have to decide you want to do that, or you can decide I only want to make the copies for my family and I'm good. And that's great too. You could self-publish. That's route one. The other route, which is well, there's a lot of different routes now. Now there's like this, we used to call them vanity presses, but now it's much more legitimate. People used to like hold their nose up to it and say, oh, they're vanity press. But now it's very much more respectable because the world has changed. You pay a publisher to publish your book and they sell it. So now you don't have to go from door to door. They've published your book. They are your publisher. They market it to their connections and they sell it and you get a little bit of money. I'm saying a little bit of money because I'm very skeptical. None of us, if you're going into this for the money, go be a plumber. This is not the way to make money. This is, there are way better ways to make money. You do this because of love, passion, because you can't do anything but you are a storyteller and it's just oozing out of you or something like that. Go make money some other way. So yes, you could pay a publisher to publish you. The way that we all romanticize and all want to be published, and is what I have done, again, not changing my lifestyle in any way in terms of finances, but is that you submit to a publisher. The publisher looks at your manuscripts and says, I really like the story. I think we could sell a lot of copies. I think I can make money from your work. I will pay you for the right to be the person to publish your work. And that's delightful. And then you get a contract, and then there are different contractual arrangements from different publishers. If they're a nice big publisher, you get more money. If it's a little publisher, you get less money. And that's not because anybody's nice or nicer or meaner. It's because a smaller publisher knows their reach and they know they will sell fewer copies. And if you're selling fewer copies, that means less money is coming in for that project. So you're going to get less money. So if you get a big publisher, more money. Hooray. But they're hard. The other thing that's very challenging is that the small publishers, and I'm being incredibly general because small is relative, but the smaller publishers will let you send them a manuscript just in their email. If you go to their websites, if you go to a place like Carben, which is a very famous Jewish publisher that publishes Sammy Spider books, their submission guidelines are on their website, and they will say, send it to this email and we'll read it and consider it. And they may even, if you're lucky, send a rejection letter. And if you're really, really lucky, they'll call you and say, we want to publish your book. Or Apples and Honey Press, which is a division of Behrman House. Same thing, you can submit to it. I think the Frum publishers are the same. ArtScroll will let you submit. Feldheim will let you submit. They have a whole different business model though, and we could talk about that separately. I'm talking about not Frum publishers, because the Frum market has a whole other thing. You could get grants, you could get people to sponsor it. If you ever notice, a lot of Jewish books have in honor and memory of, the Stone Chumash is a family. The Stones, they gave money. So most publishing doesn't work that with sponsorships the way that you make a plaque in the shul. Okay, I digressed.
And I have a couple of combined questions that I'm
Oh,
sort
should
of,
I stop talking? Because I had one more thing to
no,
say about
it's
traditional
great.
publishing.
I want
Okay,
to
the
get
bigger
in.
publishers won't look at you unless you have an agent. In order to get an agent, that's another torturous process. It's you gotta find agents and submit to agents, and they only open for queries at certain times and will only look at things at certain times, and they will most likely ghost you, and it's really, really, really hard. I'm sorry. I wish I had better news. It's really tough out there. I just got an agent last year for the first time. I had been an agent until then, and it took me 83 queries, meaning I sent out manuscripts and it was a great submission. I promise it was a great submission. It even had when I say great submission, it wasn't just a submission. I had a commitment of sales on it from PJ Library, which is like, not only publisher agent, should you take me, but I know that this book will sell a certain amount of copies because PJ Library is going to buy it. And it still was impossible. It's very, very hard out there. There's way more writers than there are agents, supply and demand, etc. Okay, next question. I'm sorry I talked for so long on that one.
No, it's great. So we had a couple of questions sort of on finding your writer's voice. And I'm sort of combining them, but asking about how you might use other children's books. Do you incorporate ideas you've read in other books? How do you sort of find, I guess, in this question is the idea that you have to find something that's never been written about. And sometimes it feels like everything's been written about. So how do you find your topics and make it new and find your original voice as an author?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I reinvent that every time I write a book. But when I was talking about how I got my ideas at the top of the talk, it's that's kind of my voice. What I care about ends up being my voice. So the things that I'm passionate about is what I want to write about. And if I care about it and then I'm interested and I'm curious about it, I'm going to find out more about it and then I'm going to write about it. Yeah, Kayla and Kugel is not this brilliantly innovative series. It's about a dog. There are a lot of dog books, so I'm not so innovative on that. And if you look carefully at it, you're going to notice a lot of inspiration from the Froggy books. You guys know the Froggy books? Froggy Learns to Swim. So Froggy is a series, and Froggy always has a problem and has a resolution, and he always turns more red in the face than green somewhere in the end of the book, and then there's a resolution. So I looked at that and said, okay, these Froggy books are great. I really like them. My kids really like them. What about them can I take into my Kayla and Kugel series? And what I did is like, oh, he has a formula. I'm going to have a formula for Kayla and Kugel books. And Kayla and Kugel books have a formula. Kugel does not turn more red in the face than the green because Kugel is not a frog. But Kugel is always sad because something's missing before the end of the book. So in the Shabbat book, he's missing family, and then family comes. In the Sukkot book, he misses guests, and then guests come. In Hanukkah book, he wants to play dreidel. It just, he's upset that they didn't get to play dreidel. So like there's always that kind of formula. So mentor texts are very useful because that's what they're called. They're called mentor texts. They're not called I stole this story from this person. But you can get inspiration. Look, if you take there was a book a couple of years ago called Journey, which is about this amazing, it's a gorgeous, expansive, incredibly detailed illustrations about a kid who draws a doorway and goes in it, and it's oh my gosh, they go into these fantasy worlds, highly complex, highly detailed illustration. It's Harold and the Purple Crayon. Okay, it's the same story, but man, did they put a different spin on it, because those Harold and the Purple Crayon is like very, very simple line drawings and was made in I don't remember, decades ago. And then this new book Journey is like, it's amazing. I think everybody, ein chadash tachad hashamash. You're not going to come up with something completely new. Everybody is the thing is if you're whatever story you're telling is to bring yourself to it, something, a twist, something unique. Like I'm telling the Three Little Sheep, which is the Three Little Pigs. Let's be real. So have I stolen the story? Yeah, but it's going to be completely different because now they're sukkahs and they're sheep and there's construction equipment. So it's my telling. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it did.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. So Anne, jumping off of that question, from that moment of finding your inspiration, your idea, the start of a book, how long does it take from start to finish on average for you?
What's finish? Holding the book in my hands or getting?
Yes, holding the book in your hands, let's say.
Assuming A timely response to submissions, which you cannot assume, 2 to 3 years. It takes a very long time because when I have the idea, I'm pounding on it in my writing group before I even show it to anybody who might want to publish it. And that's at least 2 or 3 months going back and forth with their ideas. Then I send it to an editor. Oh my gosh, then I send it to my agent. And then my agent says I can send it out. And that process is going to take 3 to 6 months. And that's assuming they're timely and they respond and they say yes. And then they say yes. And then I have an editor and then we go back and forth. And then we start illustration and that takes 4 to 5 months. And then it goes to the designer and the copy editor and that takes. And then they send the file and then, oh my gosh, it's finally done. And they send the files to China and it gets printed in China. And then it has to be on a boat for 3 to 4 months to come here. And then they finally get it and they release it a couple months after that because they don't want to get stuck that the boat is in the middle of the ocean and it doesn't show up in time. So they have cushion. So all this stuff is going to take a long time. I think 3 years might be very optimistic, actually. And then also your book can get delayed. Like my book that I just mentioned about Harry Truman's going to come out in 2025. We're in 23. I wrote it 2 years ago. It was supposed to come out in 24. They realized their list was overloaded. They called me and said, by the way, we're pushing it a year. Okay, they're pushing it a year. What am I going to do? Elise, I see your mouth moving and I cannot hear you. Unless you're talking to somebody else in the room, which
Sorry.
is fine.
I was on mute. Okay. So Meredith, do we have any other questions? Wait, you also are on mute.
We have a lot of questions, so we're going to have to get Anne back another night for a a second appearance. We have so many great questions in here, but I know we're running out of time. So
Okay, so maybe we'll be able to forward them to her, and
I'm okay with doing 2 more if you're okay with doing 2 more.
more
sure.
questions. Okay, sure.
No, but that I'm making all you guys stay. So yeah, I'll try to be quick. Let's
Okay.
do 2 more questions, then we'll go.
So Anne, with I see so many of my students and Elisa's students on here, and a big part of what we teach them is what the importance of professional development and honing your craft, whatever that might be. So one of the questions we have is, over the years, how have you become the writer and the illustrator you want to be? How does that change over time, and how do you sort of better yourself?
Yeah, well, it is ongoing. I just last 2 months ago paid for a mentorship with an amazing character designer. She did a lot of Disney work and is really good at designing characters. And I'm like, I could be better at that. So I paid her and we worked together for 4 or 5 sessions I would draw, she would critique, I would draw, she would critique, and she really taught me a lot. But I look for opportunities like that are affordable. 15 years ago, I took an online course at Parsons so I could learn Photoshop and Illustrator because those were new technologies that I knew would be important to how art was starting to be. It used to all be traditional. It was switching over to digital. And my writing group is a constant critique, and I'm in the process of trying to find an illustration critique group, which I haven't found yet. But I'm going to want to do that too. It's just ongoing. And I just learned Procreate between those 2 books, which I would answer that question earlier. So that involved getting an iPad and watching a lot of YouTube tutorials. And spending money for the iPad and the iPencil. I'd never bought a pencil that cost $100. That was something. So it's just,
how do you find, someone just followed up and asked, how do you find those groups? If we have people who are actually looking for those groups themselves, what's the best way to go about that?
I mean, I only found my writing group like in the past 3 years, and I found that through on Facebook. There are a number of groups for Jewish writers. It's called Jewish Binders, because there's a lot of binders groups on Facebook, which is women coming together in different professions. So there's Jewish binders. There's for children's book writers, there's a group called Jewish Kidlit Mavens, which is fantastic. And when I was looking for I don't know, you make friends. Like I go to conferences and oh my gosh, there's the one other from person and now we're friends. And I sat next to this person during lunch and now we're friends. And you talk and you network and you find like-minded people and you find it, whatever you find. There are groups to go to. The Jewish Book Council runs a great event once a year for authors for older books, and then they run another event for authors of children's books. I recommend looking at them. There are places to go and spaces to go where authors congregate, and they emerge out of their caves and say, "Oh, look, people." So you make friends. How do you make friends? That's a good question. We're all working on that.
So first of all, I just want to tell everybody that Tina put Anne's website into the chat, so please look her up and all her works there. And also, as somebody who is not a writer or potential writer or illustrator, but someone who appreciates your books as a professional that works with young children, I just want to say that they're really just a pleasure in our field. And I think, parents in general and, educators, we're very picky about what books, because there are a lot of books out there to choose from, and we can be discerning of what books we choose. And the books that I've used that you have written and illustrated, I don't have to work hard. You've done all the work for the reader. And it's really a tremendous gift that you've given, to the world of children's literature.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That's the best compliment ever. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap up now. Okay. Thank you again to all the academic sponsoring departments. And thank you to Tina also for helping. And thank you, of course, to Anne Koffsky for all of your insight. It was really, really interesting and really shed light on an aspect of literacy that we don't really we don't really have too much information about. So that was really enlightening and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. I love talking about myself and what I do. So this was a lot of fun. And it was great to see that there was so many people here and so much interest about the thing that I love, which is making books. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you so much.